Everybody, this is a short version here of Storm Talk, but at least want to give at least some data for those of you that are really looking at computer models and kind of confused on how this is going to play out. Hopefully this will kind of shed some light, some behind-the-scenes thinking here as we are continuing to evaluate how the night is going to go on. First off, a tornado watch is still in effect until 3 o'clock in the morning just for our northern counties, controlled out of Indianapolis. We'll wait and see what the Weather Service does later on tonight. I fully expect another watch to come out to include a good chunk of our area, if not all of our area, for the overnight period, but so far that has not been issued. If that does happen to be closer to, I would say, 11 o'clock or midnight before that happens, but as always the case, we will let you know. Still flash flood warnings in effect for Adair County, by the way, and we're checking to see how much of the flooding threat is still ongoing there along the Tennessee border, but all that is, again, pushing to our south. Meanwhile, to the north, look at these supercells. I mean, these are some mean-looking supercells now along the actual boundary itself that is located just west of Indianapolis. And this is a strong northwest to southeast flow that is taking place here right on the edge of the high pressure. So it is forcing these supercells to turn to the right and head southeast towards southern Indiana. So a lot of this activity, while it is producing some funnel clouds, and at times there's been enough sightings here that have been referring to it as a confirmed tornado, but again, no reports of tornadic damage so far, but some trees down have been reported near Lafayette, Indiana, and also around Greencastle, just came in a few moments ago. A funnel cloud located in that area just west of Indy as well. So these are the supercells that will likely keep drifting to the southeast and eventually are going to merge into more of a complex, if not some Boeing segments, as they move into southern Indiana. That looks to take place closer to midnight. Once we cross into midnight, we'll have it line up right along the Ohio River, and then after, I would say, 1 or 2 a.m. all the way through about 5 a.m., it'll shift more into central and southern Kentucky. So it's going to be an evolving setup here, and there's not one really good model that we can really use to really give high enough confidence in how it's going to evolve. We just know that the weather setup here is very likely for it to go from cellular across Illinois and Indiana to much more of a complex of storms and heavy rain for the overnight period, and we're right smack dab in the middle of all that happening. Here's one model I do want to share with you guys. It is picking up on these supercells nicely across portions of central Indiana. It shows those begin to fade somewhat as the batch of thunderstorms to the north of that, north of Indianapolis, begins to emerge, and this is when we started to see the complex nature of these begin to form into big blobs of heavy rain with embedded Boeing segments that can produce some very strong winds over 60 miles per hour. And yeah, a couple of these little notches that can form can't rule out a brief tornado that can still happen. And all that mess is going to dive down after midnight into the area of southern Indiana, very close to Louisville. It'll cross the Ohio River by 2 or 3 a.m., and it'll keep on trucking off to the south into our southern counties, with several rounds developing of heavy rain behind that all the way through at least the sunrise time frame. So again, during that entire mess overnight tonight, the potential is going to be there for high winds and isolated tornadoes. Both are still a threat for the overnight period, but the flooding threat is going to be a growing concern and probably the most dangerous, only because a lot of you are going to be going to bed. And we want to make sure before you go to bed, if you live in a flood prone area or floodplain, and you have a problem with basements that flood out, or you live near a creek, you need to just kind of keep an eye on that overnight tonight. You may want to take shift or something, somebody go downstairs and check on things, make sure everything's okay. If you hear the rain coming down really hard on the roof tonight, we need to watch for that. Here's another model's interpretation. It's showing a very similar setup. The supercells in Indiana, Illinois begin to emerge into more lines and clusters that can form more of a damaging wind threat in some cases, and torrential downpours. Again, timing very similar, close to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, drifts off to the south after that time frame, and then fades out just before sunrise. When it comes to damaging wind threat, the parameters we're looking at is wind shear. There's quite a bit of wind shear right on the edge of the high pressure system itself, located right over Indiana and central Kentucky overnight tonight. If you look at the arrows, these are the winds aloft, and it tells us that anything that forms in this region is going to move in this direction to the southeast. So its target, its aim, is going to be right into central Kentucky overnight. So confidence in that is quite high. What we don't know is the modes exactly, as far as which parameters will be more of a threat than others at times, depending on which time of the night we're talking about. So that's a little more complicated. We do see the ability for rotating storms to be a little higher on the edge, again, of that boundary located across west central Indiana, right along the west of I-65, in fact. Your tornado potential is high. Now, once you get down to the Kentucky side of things, the tornado potential begins to ease. Now, we get into a situation that once you get into these clusters of storms, once they start bumping into each other, you can get brief rotating storms that take place. That can prompt tornado warnings, but again, nothing like what we're seeing in Indiana, hopefully, will be the case overnight. Now, when we look across Indiana, we also have helicity. It's showing us 3 to 400 on values. That is more than enough for storms to rotate. So again, another indicator that a brief tornado warning cannot be ruled out. Also, another indicator is the level of the cloud base, where clouds form. And we're seeing signs at about less than 1,000 feet, 750 feet, are some of the cloud bases that we have developing. So that's another indicator that you can get funnel clouds and in some cases tornadoes to develop. It also tells us how high the moisture content is across this area. So you can get some funny looking clouds. Lots of times we call them scud clouds. They can look like a funnel cloud if the lightning lights them up at night. But keep in mind, unless they're rotating, they're just literally a scud cloud because the moisture is so thick and developing so low, the cloud base is, that it looks a little ominous. So that's a good factor for heavy rain, and it's also a factor for potential for maybe some brief tornado warnings. So that's the wind damage potential and brief tornado potential we were looking at, those parameters. This is the ability for have high levels of moisture that's being thrown into this boundary, Indiana to central Kentucky, and that is still very, very high. We've got to really stress the flash flooding potential is going to be tremendous for the overnight period, and some areas could easily pick up, I would say, 1 to 3 inches of rain in about 90 minutes time, and that's the reason why we're expecting some flash flood warnings to be issued later on. All right, so that's how it looks right now. Stay tuned. We'll have much more coming up tonight at 11 o'clock with team coverage as we see the situation evolve for the overnight. Just know that we're taking this hour by hour, so hopefully you got your Way Through Weather app handy and your No Weather Radio plugged in, just in case it goes off later tonight, and I fully expect it will.